I might have discovered Playtime Co.'s biggest secret, and it was hiding all along in a VHS tape. The existence of this place was hinted so casually, it's no wonder it remained undiscovered for so long. What I'm about to reveal will lead you down the darkest rabbit hole you've ever seen. One of the most unforgettable parts of Chapter 3 was no doubt the reappearance of Huggy Wuggy. Thanks to the red gas at Home Sweet Home, we were able to hallucinate the famous chase scene. But what if I told you that this Huggy Wuggy wasn't actually a hallucination? It's widely theorized that this nightmare version of Huggy was nothing more than the manifestation of our fears. Catnap's gas was simply showing the player what they fear most deep in their subconscious. This theory does make a lot of sense, but there's one VHS tape that might suggest otherwise. The Huggy Wuggy we see is actually a tangible being, except he's not exactly living in our dimension. Let me explain. During our journey in Chapter 3, we come across a tape labeled Claire Harper Debrief. For those of you who don't know, Claire Harper was one of the counselors working at Playtime. She was in charge of many orphans, but most notably, Marie Payne, aka Mommy Longlegs. The tape describes an incident in which Marie had a terrible reaction to Catnap's poppy gas. While the other orphans were asleep, Marie was experiencing something no staff had ever seen before.
Nightmares happen, I know, but this, dilated pupils and quivering lips, the way her eyes darted around the room, and I swear, her hand in mine, it felt like her blood was boiling beneath her skin. She saw something too, something horrible.
Claire describes the incident as being something more than just a nightmare. Despite being in a sleep-like state, Marie was still able to move her eyes around the room as if she was awake. It's there that she saw something so terrifying that it even caused her body physical harm. We come to find out that the source of her terror was a colorless monster.
Did Marie happen to describe what she saw? Yes, a monster, she said that it was colorless. Gosh, I could feel the poor little heart pounding. For her, it was right there.
Now this raises two very important questions. Why was Marie Payne the only child to experience this, and who was the colorless monster? We were under the impression that Catnap's hallucinations only showed the person's deepest fears, but if that theory was correct, then why does Marie see a colorless monster? We know from the official Poppy Playtime concept art that the monster she is referring to is Catnap. While Catnap's normal body is purple, his nightmare form is gray, or in Marie's words, colorless. There's also another glaring issue we see in this picture, and I'm sure you noticed it as well. Catnap's body looks to be composed of several dead bodies from humans and toys alike. This is without a doubt a reference to the prototype, which we know Catnap is a devout follower of. However, at this point in the story, the prototype hasn't started collecting dead bodies yet. He is still a captive test subject being experimented on ruthlessly by scientists. The only way for this to make sense is that Nightmare Catnap has to exist, but separately from the one we know. Marie Payne was not hallucinating from poppy gas, but was actually seeing a different plane of existence. But why is Marie Payne the only one able to see this version of Catnap? Well, as it turns out, Marie Payne is not alone. We, the player, get to see this version of Catnap multiple times whenever we step foot into the red gas. There's something special about Marie Payne, but there's also something special about the player. We know Marie becomes a successful candidate later on for the Bigger Bodies initiative. She was able to acclimate herself as Mommy Longlegs and performed pretty well when compared to the other toys. It's possible that the toys from the Bigger Bodies initiative are able to enter the nightmare dimension. The three confirmed cases being Huggy Wuggy, Catnap, and Mommy Longlegs. If we fast forward to the present day in the story, we the player are able to enter it as well. It's now our turn to experience what Marie Payne did all those years ago. Our transition into the nightmare dimension first happens when we go down the stairs in Home Sweet Home. If you notice, we actually walk through a door, symbolizing the moment we are transferred over. It's here that we're able to gather info from VHS tapes and radio broadcasts. One of the first stories we ever hear on the radio was news coverage of the dead body at Elliot Ludwig's estate. Apparently, the CEO was being accused of murdering a child, which forced Playtime Co. to give a public response. As you would expect, Playtime Co. denied the allegations and did their best to cover their tracks. But it's the next broadcast on the radio that actually reveals a secret so important that the message had to be reversed in order to be heard properly.
I find your presence intrusive. After all this time you return. You come in here and you kill and murder. You pillage and destroy. Your presence was demanded 10 years ago and you didn't show up. 8/8/1995. You were supposed to be here. Why weren't you here? You missed the event. You missed the meeting. You missed the party. You have no right to be here.
This message tells us more than just the date the hour of joy occurred. Whoever is speaking holds a strong grudge against us for our missed appearance and recent actions. As if our absence wasn't bad enough, our eventual return only resulted in the death of the surviving toys. The line, "You have no right to be here," sounds awfully like someone we've encountered before. In fact, he could be someone that's been warning us to stay away since we came back to the factory. The voice we hear in the radio is actually Catnap, who's venting his frustration out to the player. If we were there at the hour of joy, then we would have met the same fate as the other Playtime staff. None of the Bigger Bodies Initiative toys would be dead either, and Catnap would be left alone to worship the prototype. There's a clear difference between how this Catnap speaks versus the one we hear through most of the game. The original Catnap has always given us gentle warnings to show that all he wants is for us to leave. This Catnap's voice, however, is much more aggressive and angrier, and you can feel the hatred in the way he talks. It's possible that this place expresses the darker thoughts of the ones inside. If you don't believe me just yet, wait till we get to the final piece of evidence. The VHS tape we insert before the Huggy chase scene also gives us some more insight. The tape starts off by proudly proclaiming the benefits for working at the Playtime factory. But halfway through the tape, the words start to get more personal and directed towards the player. We get to hear voice lines like, "Should you come back years later," and "May you descend into the dark." It's been speculated that these lines are nothing more than just the subconscious of our protagonist. After all, who wouldn't have regret leaving all those orphans behind to be experimented on? But much like the radio broadcasts, this is actually Huggy Wuggy speaking to the player. The voice from the VHS tape speaks to the player in a taunting tone. He's familiar with the situation we found ourselves in and tells us how we look like from the toy's point of view.
May you descend into the dark and the dust, finding all that awaits you are incomprehensible horrors, each hungry for your return, each eager that they might find you. Perhaps they'd smile at you from a shadow, their smiling mouths full of teeth and meat and plastic, watching and waiting patiently for their turn at a warm welcome.
Much like what we saw with Catnap, Huggy Wuggy's darker thoughts are expressed clearly in his nightmare vision. While he was silent during our chase in Chapter 1, we finally get to hear his inner thoughts thanks to the poppy gas. Huggy Wuggy hates us, and for good reason, and from his point of view, we deserve to be killed by his hands. Unfortunately for him though, we are able to wake up despite him capturing us. It's still unclear how dying or getting hurt in the nightmare dimension affects someone. We know that Marie Payne was suffering physically after seeing Catnap, but it's not like he was attacking her. Huggy Wuggy, on the other hand, actually opened his mouth when he called us to go in for the kill. It's safe to say that there's still a lot of unknowns on how Catnap's poppy gas works, and it might be a few chapters away before we're finally able to learn the truth. So, what are your thoughts on this? Why did we see Huggy Wuggy after breathing in the poppy gas? Was it because of our guilt for his creation? Or is the nightmare dimension plausible? Let us know your theories in the comments below. The person who comes up with the best theory will have their comment pinned for everyone to see. If you enjoyed watching this video, then hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to ring the bell icon so you always stay tuned with more of such content. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.